Hey everyone, I'm Rob Pizzola, co-host of the Circles Off podcast and a professional sports bettor that specializes in hockey. Today I'm going to walk you through how to bet on hockey, outline the different types of hockey bets, share some general advice, and highlight what to avoid when you're trying to find an edge. Whether you're new to hockey betting or you're just looking to sharpen your strategy, this video will help you get a deeper understanding of how to approach the game with a probabilistic mindset. Let's get to it. Let's start with the basic types of bets you can place on hockey. The most common is the moneyline bet, a straight up bet on which team will win the game, including overtime and shootouts. You're simply picking the winner, but the odds will reflect each team's perceived chance of winning. Number 2 is the puck line. This is essentially hockey's version of a point spread. Typically, one team will be favored by 1.5 goals, and you'll either bet on them to win by 2 or more, or the underdog to lose by no more than 1 goal, or win outright. Then you have your totals, over/under bet. Here you're betting on the total number of goals scored by both teams combined. The line is typically set somewhere around 6 goals, and you decide whether the teams will score more or fewer than that number. And finally, props. These are bets on specific events within the game. For example, will a player score a goal? How many saves will the goalie make? Or even which team will score first? Prop bets can be fun and in general are considered easier to beat, but they often come with higher juice. Now that you know the basic bet types, let's get into what really matters, finding value. A lot of people approach hockey betting from a fan's perspective, but the key is to think probabilistically, not emotionally. Let's break down some key areas to focus on. First and foremost, advanced stats. Metrics like Corsi, Fenwick, expected goals, and even high danger scoring chances are critical in modern day hockey betting. These stats give you a more detailed picture of how teams and players are performing beyond just wins and losses. For instance, a team might be on a losing streak, but their underlying metrics could indicate they're due for a positive turnaround, or vice versa. Number 2, goaltending. Goaltending is arguably the most volatile and important factor in hockey betting. A hot goalie can steal games, while a struggling one can sink even the best teams. I recommend diving into goalie-specific stats like goals saved above expected, GSAX, or goals saved above average, GSAA, and use those to assess whether a goalie is overperforming or underperforming. Number 3, injuries and line changes. Unlike other sports, hockey lines change frequently. Injuries to key players, particularly defensemen or top-line forwards, can significantly impact a team's performance. Be sure to monitor lineup changes, as they can sometimes open up value in the betting markets, especially if you're able to capitalize on that news right away. Now that we've covered some key data points, let's talk strategy. The first thing I always tell people to avoid is betting based on gut feeling or team loyalty. Instead, look at each game like a probability puzzle. First and foremost, shop for the best line. Always compare odds across multiple sportsbooks. Even small differences in the line can have a huge impact over time, especially in a sport like hockey where a single goal often decides the outcome. Shopping around is essential to getting the best possible value. Secondly, focus on value, not winners. I know this is counterintuitive, but this is crucial. You don't need to bet on who you think will win every time. You need to bet on the side that has better value relative to the odds. If a team has a 45% chance of winning, but the odds imply only a 40% chance, that would be a value bet. It's not about picking the better team, it's about picking the team that's mispriced by the market. You also want to avoid recency bias. Hockey is a high variance sport, meaning a team can win or lose several games in a row, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're playing well or that they're playing poorly. Use advanced metrics and longer-term data to avoid getting trapped by recent results that don't tell the full story. Finding an edge is not easy, but it's definitely possible if you're willing to put in the work. However, there are also some pitfalls along the way that people tend to commonly fall into. The first one is situational factors. People tend to pay close attention to travel schedules, back-to-back games, and other factors like that, like teams playing at altitude, for example. These factors are already accounted for by the betting market and offer little value to bettors. Yes, they must be accounted for, but but I would avoid betting against a team simply because they're playing the latter half of a back-to-back. Number 2, line movement. Some bettors love to monitor how the lines move from the time they open to just before the game starts. The belief is that sharp money can give you clues as to where the value lies, but the reality is that most bettors put far too much stock into this. Once the line has been bet heavily, there are rarely times where you can extract value by simply betting the quote-unquote sharp side. And finally, public models. There are a lot of people out there who are publicly posting their picks and the probabilities from their models. I'm not here to demean everyone, but the reality is that most of these public models are not going to be good enough for you to get an edge on betting hockey. If they were, they either wouldn't be public, or the markets would be moving towards these numbers consistently. Be careful of what you are willing to trust out there. At the end of the day, betting on hockey comes down to understanding probabilities, looking for value, and being disciplined enough to stick to your strategy and avoid the common pitfalls that I mentioned. Whether you're a seasoned bettor or you're just starting out, my biggest piece of advice is always think in terms of probabilities and be willing to bet on either side of the game depending on the odds. If you like this video and you want to learn more about betting on hockey or other sports, make sure to subscribe to the Circles Off channel on YouTube or check out our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thanks for watching and good luck with your hockey bets.